Hi, my name is John, and this is Business Update. In this week's episode, we'll be talking about Netflix venture into the video gaming. They've already recently acquired a gaming publisher, so we'll talk about that. Next, we'll be updating you with regards to the Steam Deck's performance in terms of being able to showcase 60 frames per second and how it fared with some of the AAA games that you're familiar with. We'll talk about that. And next is the update regarding Nintendo's plan to improve their Switch Online service, but it's going to cost you a lot. So we'll talk about that. And lastly, we'll be talking about Apple's argument with regards to side loading apps using other platforms other than the App Store here. They're making a case with a recent white paper research. Do they have a strong case here? Or is it just to I won't say embellish, but more to bolster their case as to why they others or users shouldn't be downloading apps in other platforms or other avenues or purchases as well. Anyway, so first we have, as mentioned, Netflix has recently acquired a gaming developing publishing studio. They're venturing now into other realms aside from obviously providing streaming services for movies and TV for the consumer. They're now foraying into one would call an interesting investment, so to speak. Obviously, investing in gaming publishing is going to be costly, and as you may notice, there are only a few big publishers or platforms that that are known of. You have Sony PlayStation, Microsoft's Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. So publishing or making games can be costly and takes a lot of time to develop a viable game, and not necessarily it will be a big hit. Anyway, nonetheless, that Netflix is foraying into the gaming studio by acquiring Night School Studio, an indie game developer. So they're trying to use or capitalize on their success from their recent launch of After Party way back in 2019, and they were known popular game Oxenfree. I've seen that, but I haven't played. Launched way back in 2016. Now, what's interesting about that particular game, it has some semblance of a popular TV series that Netflix has been showcasing. Uh, Sounds familiar? The Stranger Things TV series. Anyway, according to Mike Verdu, or Verdu, I don't know how to pronounce it, Vice President of Game Development at Netflix, he mentions that the platform's initial game offerings will be completely free. I think that's a big plus here if you're trying to entice people to use your platform or play your games, and everything that's free always is a plus here. And it's interesting, not only is it free, there will be no ads. So the option for in-app purchases would be exclusive games designed for every kind of gamer at any level of playing. Obviously, trying to entice consumers or gamers to use their platform now. I think Epic Games has been trying to do that by lowering the purchase fee for certain games, competing with the likes of Valve, Steam, and whatnot. Or I think GOG is another, but we'll have to wait and see if choosing this path will give them the success that I'm sure they're trying to establish here. And what's interesting, Netflix also revealed that its early library of mobile games will be offered in the platform here now, which already has debuted in Poland. They're also rolling out free subscribers in Spain as well as in Italy. So not every region globally here. So stay tuned for that one. What's interesting here is for the games to be downloaded, you still have to externally download, not necessarily on the Netflix platform that you're using. So you still have to use either Android or Google Play in this case to be able to install the games here. So it's still an added step. Whether that would turn off players here or gamers here, we'll have to wait and see. But is it the right direction for a company like Netflix venturing into other aspects like gaming industry. It's a big task because not many companies can be successful. And as you can see here, how Google Stadia have fared in terms of competing with the likes of established companies like Microsoft and Sony here. But nonetheless, they're still looking forward to, getting more players into their platform. So Netflix has mentioned their signal for months now that it sees itself as a prospective player in the gaming space. Now, obviously, being popular in the streaming services, it makes sense for them to go into the online or gaming sector. But how successful can they be? Stay tuned for that one. I'll keep everyone posted on that one. And obviously, its plan is to amass a bigger slice of the media pie that is thus far dominated. They've dominated in the streaming service, television shows, and movies alike here. So is it a good choice? Yeah, but we still have to wait and see what type of games that they develop. I think that at the end of the day, for them to be successful is the types of games they produce, similar how uh, Microsoft is doing, maybe provide a subscription base like Game Pass, or how Sony does it by providing exclusive games, great exclusive games, and I think people would use their or patronize their platform, or in this case the games here. Anyway, next we have on tangent regarding games. Now, obviously, games is an important aspect, especially now. A lot of people are staying at home, a lot of free time. For Nintendo, they've been popular for quite some time with their Nintendo Switch, right? And the recent launch of their Nintendo Switch upgrade with the OLED screen looks looks tremendous, right? But if you look inside their console, it's still the same unit from 4 3 4 years ago. So it's getting kind of old. And what's interesting here is they've not necessarily made any improvement with their online services. And it was mentioned before in a previous article that they're going to offer a premium tier service that's going to cost you a pretty penny here. And according to Eurogamer.com, it's going to cost you around 35 euros. I think around 50 bucks, $50 here. Now, what they're offering in their premium tier service of online is added games, and then there's an expansion pack for Animal Crossing. I played Animal Crossing during the lockdown, but I haven't played it since. But they're trying to entice people with featuring multiplayer option, which is good. NES games, yeah, retro games, SNES games, and I think Mega Drive and N64 games. But is it well worth the additional fee to play retro games here? Now, if we were to compare with the likes of Sony, who charges $15 for the latest games, I think that's a well worth investment here. And if you compare that to Xbox Games Pass, which is even more tremendous because once you pay the fee, you can play the entire catalog or library of games from start to finish to your heart's content. On the other hand, Nintendo is only offering the online experience as the expansion pack, uh, which will cost you for a 1 year service or 12-month subscription of $50 for individual membership. Okay, slightly cheaper compared to the other platform, but in terms of the games, obviously it pales in comparison here. I think Nintendo is not doing any a disservice technically for their loyal gamers here, even I. And they're also offering a family option in the amount of $80 here, which is not kind of cheap, even though they're saying that you could support up to 8 players or 8 accounts. Obviously, typically in a family, you might have 3 or 4 family members. But either way, subscribing for that amount of money, you have to offer something of value to your consumers. And let's look at the list of games here. It's nothing that, I mean, it's not that bad, but it's not that tremendous in a sense, right? Nintendo 64 games that they're offering is, you have Super Mario 64, which is not bad. You have Zelda, Ocarina of Time, okay, Mario Kart 64. You have Dr. Mario, if you still remember that game. Mario Tennis, Yoshi's Story. So nothing too too compelling if you think about it. So would you subscribe and just play this a few types of games here? Obviously, subscribing is the assumption is you're going to be able to play a lot of games for a long periods of time. That's why you're subscribing, just like in a streaming service. But if you're only offering a few games here and there and asking for a pretty sum or a significant amount, I don't think it's up for value here comparatively compared to the other platforms. Then you have Sega Genesis or Sega Mega Drive's games. You have Sonic, which is not bad. The Hedgehog 2. You have Castlevania Bloodlines. Okay. Contra Hard Corps. What else? You have Fantasy Star 4. Shinobi 3 is another. And then upcoming games, you have Pokemon Snap. Not my favorite game. Then you have Zelda, Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, Kirby 64, Mario Golf, Paper Mario, and so forth. So is it enough to convince gamers to purchase or subscribe to their subscription, which is, I think it's getting too old. And, not offering better games. They should have offered it from right off the bat, and charging it too much, you know, even I would think twice before even considering subscribing. And there are always better options with the likes of the up and coming Stream Deck that's going to compete with the Switch here. And for all the success that the Switch has generated, not offering the Nintendo Switch Pro could hamper the sales of the Switch console here, which leads us to the next topic here, which is there were early reports regarding how the Steam Deck is performing in terms of being able to play latest AAA games and offer 60 frames per second. Now, personally, I'm not focused more on the frames, but in terms of the gaming experience, that being able to play a lot of games mobile. That's why I think what made the Switch console very popular, the portability here. Imagine that you have a PC that you could bring anywhere and play any games here. You could just imagine playing Cyberpunk 2077 and then play retro games, maybe Command and Conquer Red Alert. You could do that at the whim, just being able to bring it. So you need to have that oomph in your Steam Deck to be able to do that. Now there were early reports that looks promising here, so let's take a look. So according to techspot.com, so it's showing that it can get 60 frames per second in terms of playing AAA games here. And obviously in terms of fidelity here, you can't expect high definition compared to when you're playing in your monitor or in your TV screen at home. But the important thing, it can play smooth video gameplay, so to speak. So it's targeting 800 p, not necessarily close to 1080p, but nonetheless, it's going to give you a smooth experience, 30 hertz experience in modern AAA games, which is obviously going to be demanding in terms of CPU usage and GPU usage here. And based on the results here, let's take a closer look. So the Steam Deck, as mentioned, is powered by an AMD APU, which uses Zen 2 processor. So not to bore the people here, it gives you a comparable desktop PC here. It has 4 cores and 8 threads. So the speed's not super fast, but enough to play majority of the latest games here, which is important in the first place. And in terms of the RAM, it has 16 gigabytes of LDDR5 RAM. So it can play most modern games here. Now the screen here is only 7-inch, which is not bad, and its aspect ratio is 16:10, so it's slightly wider compared to the traditional one. So the resolution is 1220 by 800 pixels here. So according to a Chinese developer who tested 4 popular games using the Steam OS setup, so you have Cyberpunk 2077 1, you have the Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Doom, and Dota 2. So obviously different types of game, different requirements, so to speak. So let's see how it fared. So obviously getting at least 30 frames per second would be the minimum requirement here. But as long as it doesn't stutters, I think I'm okay with that. So if we look at the performance of the Shadow of the Tomb Raider, it was able to provide 30 frames per second on average on highest preset. Now, I'm not into highest setting as long as it can work comparably and stable. I think you know I'm curious is as to if this is a good replacement for the Switch. I was planning on buying another Switch to give to my kids, but if that's the case, I'm thinking carefully whether to invest in in the Steam Deck here, since I have a lot of PC games, or I like to play more PC games, and if I have that portability, I think that would convince me to purchase the device here. Now, on the other hand, for Doom, the game, it's easier to run, and it can run 60 frames per second, which is not bad, on medium presets. Now, for Dota 2, the least demanding game here can provide almost 50 frames per second on its highest preset. So, what's interesting here, as you can see here, hopefully if they can actually deliver the performance that they mentioned here based on the reviews here, I think a lot of people is going to buy this, and it's going to smell trouble if you're Nintendo here, because you've been complacent in producing the same Switch unit over and over with the Switch Lite, but the consumer has been clamoring for a beefier, bigger screen, a more powerful battery so it could last longer, and obviously the games is the key here at the end of the day. But obviously for PC games, there's been a plethora of games that's being offered at a very affordable prices, and compared it to the Switch with the online service that they're offering, which is abysmal if you think about it, and then their triple A games, which is you have to pay premium price to be able to play. That's why I only have two games, the Animal Crossing and Zelda. The rest are all independent games or retro games that I love playing in other consoles, so I bought it here as well. And what's interesting here, you could play the game here for almost 3 hours, and you still have less than 50% of battery capacity, which I think is another key part here. Battery capacity and how long it would last. Obviously, if it could last, I don't know, 5, 6 or more hours, so that you will be immersed in the game here, and you don't have to bring the charging brick here, and you still get to enjoy playing those games. Anyway, and hopefully it will arrive sooner here, and hopefully it would be available in our market here, since it's announced to be released later this year by December. I don't know how fast it will get here in Asia, in particular here in the Philippines, but I'm looking forward to seeing that console and in action per se here. Valve has mentioned that the Steam Deck can also be used as a PC controller, so an added feature, maybe a gimmick here, but if it can help you be immersive in playing games, why not? So the starting price here is $400, as I mentioned, so with 64 gigabytes of storage, which I don't recommend. You have to pony up here, so pay at least $500 for the 256 gigabyte of NVMe storage, so it should be faster. And if you want to double that storage, 512, it's going to cost you similar to how a PlayStation unit would cost, around $650. So is it too expensive? But in terms of if it can provide or deliver for what it's advertising, I think it's a good complement here. If you have a good PC gaming playing desktop, then you can bring it when you go out, and eventually people will go out. So when people travel again or trying to relax, obviously if they have their Steam Deck, they could play any of the games that they like. I sure would, especially the really old games, the SimCity, what else? The Red Alert series, the Command and Conquer, StarCraft, all of those, if you're still familiar with those games. Anyway, for lastly, we'll talk about Apple's new research that reports that side loading apps is not safe for users per se. So according to TechTimes.com, that they're making a case based on a white paper that they presented here. Now, as it is now, one thing that Apple does not mention is on its own the apps that they are allowing developers to apply in their ecosystem so that people could download the apps here. on its own, there are a lot of malicious apps that's being allowed to exist, so that unwitting consumers or users might mistake it for a different type of app and would download it, and they'll be infected with the malware here. Now, what Apple is trying to make a strong case here is, if you're trying to, let's say, download games or purchase items, typically you have to course through the Apple App Store, and obviously Apple will charge a 30% fee before even the developers get their cut. Obviously, with what happened with the Epic case and versus Apple, the judge deemed it that it's unfair for Apple to restrict options in terms of payment options. So, offering another venue for consumers to purchase their games or apps here should be allowed here. Now, what Apple is trying to say here is that side loading is where users will be able to find and download apps from certain sources, right, outside of the Apple App Store. And obviously, the research contests that there's an increasing attacks of malware infection, which kind of makes sense, because obviously you don't know the sources of the other source other sources of apps where you're downloading, whether through the website or to other platforms. But the question here is, on their existing platform, there's already a high risk of downloading malicious app in their platform, which is what is the company here, whether it's Apple or even Google, doing to stop those proliferation. Because the fact that they're benefiting from those businesses paying a fee, yet they allow, malicious or dangerous parties to penetrate their platform, and not they're not facing any repercussion, because if people were to download it, it would infect their devices, and even worse, could infect their businesses, right? And it can be harmful, and it is harmful if you think about it. So does Apple have a point here? Yes, they have, but the question here is, have they done enough? That's the whole point. It's not just the side loading issue here. I think it goes beyond the side loading issue here. And what's interesting, Apple is using statistics to make their case that Apple noted that Android powered devices actually have 47 times more malware infecting compared to iPhone. But they don't mention that iPhones is already infected with a lot of malwares in their platform. What are they doing about that? And mentioning, saying disparaging things about your competitor does not bode well in terms of, advocating for privacy concerns from your consumers, or loyal Apple consumers here. Now, Apple goes on to say in the paper that maintaining security and privacy on the whole iOS ecosystem is critical importance to different users. Well, not really, because it only restricts the options as a consumer here. If, let's say, if I'm trying to play, let's say, Fortnite, since Fortnite is banned, how can I play the game? So I have to look for other means. And wouldn't it be for the best interest for Apple to just let Apple be in the platform? Let's say they pay a fine so that they could, let others download the game. And then if they want to pay the fee, if you're a player, you want to transact with the platform or use the prescribed that Epic is using, they should be allowed to do it. Obviously, this would hurt the bottom line for Apple. That's why they're trying to make a strong case as to why consumers should stick with what Apple is prescribing here. And Apple also noted that if the company was forced to support side loading, which hurts their business, through direct download as well as third party apps, they say that iPhone users will then be constantly on the lookout for certain scams. Well, that's actually happening right now. So it doesn't matter if side loading is the main issue here or not. Question is, what does the company do with those malicious apps? Why are they allowed to be even in their platform in the first place? So meaning the policies, the screening policies that they're doing is not enough to protect the interests of their consumers. And if I were to use their platform, let's say it's just Apple, obviously it goes both ways for Google as well. It's kind of scary if you think about it. And obviously cyber crime has been on the rise, especially with the pandemic. A lot of businesses has been transitioning to online platforms, and it gives leeway or access for nefarious parties to take advantage of those vulnerabilities. And obviously, one of the biggest platforms, the App Store and even Google Play Store, are key targets for many cybercrime activities here. And saying that this would make them unsure of whom or what to trust. Well, obviously it's up to the platform to create that trust. That's why a lot of responsibility is bestowed upon them. They make tons of money here on their consumers. Then isn't their responsibility to protect the interests of the consumer, not just the business themselves or even shareholders? And stating that resulting in users downloading fewer apps coming from fewer developers. Well, that's a chicken and the egg issue here. Obviously, if you're not sure which app to download, which is safe or not, then you've not done your job. Obviously, as a legit developer, your goal here is to create a safe, enjoyable experience of downloading the software. But if you allow other unsafe software to be included in your platform, then you know that boils on you. It's not on the other developers or even the users, because obviously the user is only wiser if they know if there are illicit apps or developers there. And if you don't allow it, then it's a safe haven, right? Just like in school, that the faculties in charge who's teaching or guiding students, because the environment is safe. Once it's not safe, then you will not send your kids to any school or even universities, knowing that if it's not a safe environment, because let's say the neighborhood is not safe, people around it is untrustworthy or whatever, right? And same goes here with the platform here. You have to build trust with your community, and so far Apple and Google has done a terrible job on this one. Hopefully they can make amends with this one. Obviously they have the resources to do this, not just focusing on generating revenue from getting our profile and information here. Anyway, I'll keep you updated with the goings on here with regards to the privacy concerns here. Anyway, thanks for watching again. Come back again on Wednesday for more business update. If you enjoy these types of video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Also, you can leave your comments down below if you have any question with today's topic. Also, I've left the link in the description below for the full article in today's topic. As always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.